Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and this is our second full week of the Pantry Challenge, the Three Rivers Challenge, and I'm going to share with you another week, I guess 6 days full of meals here from our homestead. And just like with last week's video, I will share in the description a list of our menu for the week, and then there will be timestamps down in the comments so that you can skip around if there are just a few days worth of meals that you want to check out, because I know the whole video can be quite long when I'm sharing everything we ate for an entire, 6 days. So hopefully that helps you be able to skip around and just see what you want to see. And all right, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Here are our meals for this week. It's Sunday morning, and I have a very unappealing looking casserole I'm going to put in the oven, but it's going to taste great. With our casserole, we're going to have 1 pound of uncured bacon from the freezer, and it's going to taste great. This casserole has leftover baked potato on the bottom, it has leftover taco meat in it, and then it also has water glassed eggs. We're going to serve it with some home-baked bread. This was left over from a few days before and needs eaten up. We're also going to use some home-canned Concord grape jelly and some home-canned apple butter. I overcooked the bacon a little bit because I got distracted with little boys, but they will eat it. And then here's how that casserole turned out. It has really nice taco flavor, and the kids just loved it. So like I said, it's going to taste better than it looked initially. But it's just a great way to use up what we had in the fridge. And then we have a little bit of leftover biscotti. David made this lemon biscotti on Saturday, and we're just going to let the kids pick from that and eat the rest of that this morning too. So nice little breakfast. The kids get to kind of pick what they want on their plate. And we're using up food and filling bellies. That's the goal here. My big boys just came in from doing chores, and so they get a little cup of espresso because when you do the work of a man, you get espresso like a man. So they enjoy that treat. And when they worked hard, now they got a refuel with some good nutrition. And now I'm working on our Sunday soup. Every Sunday we have soup. I have a quart of chicken in the bottom of a pot. I'm adding another quart of chicken broth to it. Good nutritious bone broth to warm our bodies and provide some nutrition. I added some cut up carrots and some cut up celery that were in the fridge that I believe was the last of the New Year's Eve vegetables that we had. Also sliced up 1 raw onion. We're going to add that in there. And then adding some freeze-dried green beans and peas. And these will just rehydrate with the broth as it's simmering. We're also going to add some freeze-dried cooked rice. This also will rehydrate while it's cooking. This saves me the time on a busy Sunday morning before church. I don't have to cook rice to add it to it. And Sunday mornings can be busy, so anything that saves me time is just a blessing. So I enjoy the freeze-dried food. Now we're going to sprinkle in some dehydrated parsley. And then I'm just adding a little extra water to it because I know a lot of that freeze-dried stuff is going to absorb some moisture and it's going to need some extra. So after simmering for a couple of hours, this is how that soup turned out. Just a healthy little treat for a Sunday afternoon right after church. The kids love this, and then they're eating up the last of that leftover bread to kind of dip into their soup. And the kids like that. So that is how that turned out. Once again, having soup simmering on the stove on Sundays while we're busy, this is the best way that I can have a home-cooked meal ready right after church because we usually, by the time we're done, it's right around noon or 12:30, and if I had to cook something from scratch, then I wouldn't have time. So if it's simmering on the wood stove and ready for us when we're done, that is just such a lifesaver. And then the baby, he doesn't get a lot of broth in his because he likes to feed himself and will make a mess. So I just kind of strain out the broth. He gets to eat those softened veggies, and that works out great for us. All right, now it's time for dinner. We're going to have a steak stir fry. So I just sliced up a little bit of steak, and we're getting that cooking now on the stove. And then to that, I am going to add 1 sliced raw onion. I'm also going to add, this is a cube of frozen garlic scape puree. And then here are the veggies that we're going to add to our stir fry. These are frozen kale stems. I save the stems when we eat the kale leaves in salads in the summer because they make a perfect crunch, just some added nutrition to our stir fry that would otherwise go to waste if I didn't save it. And then we also have some frozen homegrown pepper slices here. We have some freeze-dried broccoli we're going to add to the stir fry. And we have a quart, or I guess a pint of freeze-dried green beans that are also going to go into our stir fry. So I needed to rehydrate the freeze-dried items, and as you can see, when you add water, it just kind of like a sponge. It just soaks it back in, and then the texture of the items is very similar to just a blanched vegetable before you would freeze it. To our stir fry, I'm adding just a little bit of coconut aminos, some honey, and some sesame oil. And this is how we're gonna kind of flavor our stir fry. I can't have soy, so we use coconut aminos instead. And I'm always looking for ways to use up this sesame oil. So in a pantry challenge, this is a great way for me to use that up. Stir fries are wonderful in a pantry challenge because you can just add what you have to the pot. And then to thicken up my stir fry a little bit, I'm going to add arrowroot powder. Arrowroot is something that I use in place of flour or cornstarch to thicken things like gravies. I also use arrowroot powder in my pie fillings and like this in the stir fry, just anywhere that I would need a thickening agent. It's also great for gluten-free baking, which is why I have it in the house. Okay, and then that's how our stir fry looks. We're going to serve it. People have a choice of coconut aminos or soy sauce. And then we're just going to serve this with some jasmine rice. And then the kids always love to try to use their chopsticks. We have these little trainers that a friend sent us from Korea, from South Korea. So those are great for little hands that want to try to use chopsticks. Okay, and then Adam likes to eat kimchi on his. We have this kimchi in the back of the fridge that he had bought while he was home during the holidays in December, and so we need to use that up. So he's eating some of that kimchi with his stir fry. As you can see, nice practice with the chopsticks here. Uh-oh, we have a sad John John. I think he needs some help using his little chopsticks, so I'm going to go help him, and then we'll see if that will make him a little happier. There, that's better. Now he's figured it out, and he's happy to eat his dinner, so it's amazing what something fun like these little chopstick trainers can do to get a little guy to eat his veggies happily and to have fun with his meal. And then our Sunday night tradition, we watch America's Funniest Videos together as a family, and we always have some popcorn that we make in bacon grease, and then we serve it with some apple slices, so our raw apples from storage. All right, it's Monday, and today we're having biscuits. This is my biscuit recipe, and for my family with my children, I double this recipe for a breakfast. So that is what we're going to do today. I have all of my ingredients in a bowl here, and I had enough fresh eggs. I didn't need to use water glass today. We used fresh eggs from our hens. And then we're going to add water in place of milk because I did not have time to get cashew milk made this morning, so water works just fine in the recipe. And then for our fat, in place of butter, we are using palm fruit shortening. We use this quite often. We don't have lard right now, but we do have palm fruit shortening. And the secret to nice flaky biscuits is to cut your fat into it and to not overwork the dough. So I'll kind of show you how I do that. I'm going to put the palm fruit shortening in, and then I'm just going to kind of mix all my ingredients together using this little biscuit dough cutter. And I've got a little helper who's very intent on trying to get his hands in the bowl. So it's quite a challenge doing this one-handed with the phone in one hand and keeping him out of there. But we're going to get it done. As you can see, this is about how I like my dough to be done. And then what I'm going to do is put this on a piece of parchment paper on the counter, kind of mix it together a little more, and then I'm just going to roll it out just like this. As I mentioned, I don't want it overworked. I don't thoroughly mix everything together. I just get it like this and kind of roll it out, and that's what's going to make my biscuits nice and flaky. And then we're going to use a little biscuit shape cutter. The children chose miniature biscuits today, so that's the size we're making. And then I'm just getting them on my cookie sheet so that I can bake these and we can have them for breakfast. We'd like to have biscuits. We have these a couple times a month. This is a favorite breakfast here. He's chewing on a leftover cookie. Gracie had made some chocolate chip cookies, and so that's keeping him happy while I work on the biscuits. And then once I cut them all out the first time, I kind of work all the dough together into a pile without like kneading it or overworking it, and roll it out once again, and then I can cut my second round of biscuits. And then with our biscuits, we're going to have some eggs today. Here are some water glassed eggs that we have. I just rinsed them off, and then we're going to crack these and see what they look like. I believe these were from July, this batch of eggs. And I know it's inevitable. Someone's going to comment about how my children shouldn't be up on the counter like this, but this is how I get baking done. If he were not on the counter right now, he would be running around at my feet, getting into whatever drawers and cabinets are around and getting into things, or he'd be whining, and I wouldn't be able to get this breakfast done without waking up all the children and having a very chaotic morning. So this is just how we do things here, and it works for us. If you have a rule in your house that your kids don't sit on the counter, that's good for you. This is what we do here. And so as you can see, I'm sniffing every water glassed egg just to make sure. You can tell if they're off pretty much immediately when you break them open, but all of these were good. I didn't have to toss any, so they're going to be great for our scrambled eggs this morning. Once they're all done here, I'm going to whisk them together, add a little bit of salt and pepper, and then this is what we will have with our biscuits this morning for breakfast. Once again, trying to keep the baby from making a mess and spilling this bowl of eggs. He's such an eager little helper. I love it. It's nice to have the company, but also can be a challenge, especially while trying to film this too. But sometimes you've got to satisfy their curiosity, let them help for a little bit. And then to the bottom of our cast iron pan, I've added some bacon grease. We always save our bacon grease for various uses in the kitchen. And then to that hot pan and grease, we're adding the water glassed eggs, and that's what we're going to have for our scrambled eggs this morning. And our biscuits are done, dairy-free biscuits here for the children this morning, and they turned out nice and flaky. I think they'll get the job done. And we're going to go ahead and serve those with the scrambled eggs. And then the children, to put on their biscuits, will have a choice of peach freezer jam, and then we have the leftover apple butter from yesterday that we had in the morning, and also the leftover Concord grape jelly. So the kids can kind of choose. A lot of them like to do one of each, especially since the biscuits are so tiny. It gives them an opportunity to try each of the flavors of jam and jelly that are available. So I just kind of peel them apart, and then we put a little bit of jam or jelly in the middle of it. We'll add some scrambled eggs, and then the kids can eat that. So nothing fancy, but it gets the job done. Children seem to enjoy it, and it will be a nice start to our day so that we can get to now all of our chores and school, and everybody will have a nice, full, happy belly. Many of the children in our house eat ketchup on their scrambled eggs. They get it from me because I'm big on ketchup on my scrambled eggs too. So that is one food that we definitely make sure we keep enough of in the house. I don't currently can my own ketchup because I just don't grow enough tomatoes. So we just purchase them in bulk quantities through Azure Standard, and that is what we usually have as our condiment. So as you can see, they ate them up. There were only a couple biscuits left. And for lunch, we are going to have baked potatoes. So I'm looking in my raw potato storage. As you can see, they are starting to sprout. So we really need to get busy in using up more of our potatoes here. But they're still perfectly wonderful to use. You just pick the sprouts off, wash them really well, and they'll be good to go. So we just got our potatoes washed, and Gracie here is helping me poke the holes so that we can get these baked. And we like to do a little baked potato bar for breakfast. So we're going to make a bunch of different toppings for the potatoes, and that'll be nice. So we're going to start with some bacon. I have a pound of bacon here that I kind of cut up into little pieces, and these are going to bake in the oven with the potatoes. And now I'm going to make a vegan cheese sauce from these ingredients. So what I'm going to use is some home-canned butternut squash. We've got some nutritional yeast. That gives the cheese flavor. We're going to put some garlic in. We've got some lemon juice right here that I almost spilled. We're going to put that in with our cashews. None of this is measured. I'm just winging it here like I usually do. We're going to add the garlic cloves in. Of course, we'll put some salt. And this is going to make a nice little cheese sauce. Always remember when you use your home canned veggies and fruit to drain that juice and save it in the fridge. Add it to your next batch of soup or rice or whatever you're making. There's nutrition in that juice. After putting it all in the food processor, I decided to add some more nutritional yeast, and I added a little bit of raw honey because I wanted to sweeten it up a little bit. And this is what our cheese sauce looks like. That'll be great on top of our baked potatoes. Now here we have an onion that was sprouting in storage. It had started to sprout, and so I just put it somewhere sunny to let it sprout even more, because these sprouts can be chopped up and used as fresh green onions. So that's what we're going to use also on top of our baked potatoes today. So any other little onions that I have that have started to sprout, I'm just going to put them up somewhere sunny and let them continue to do so. Our potatoes are all baked here, and I kind of salted and peppered the top of them. And now the kids can choose between all of the various toppings that we have. So here's that bacon that I also baked in the oven. We have some canned spinach they can add to the top of the baked potato. We have those green onions that I chopped. There's that vegan cheese sauce. We also have some salsa, some of them like that. We have some home pickled peppers here. And then I'm still trying to use up this beet kraut. I only have one kid that really likes the beet kraut, so it's been slow in trying to that used up. But there we go. There's a child's baked potato that they made and picked their toppings for. Nice, easy treat. The kids love this because it's one of those, choose your own adventure meals that they can pick whatever they want on top. As you can see, they all like different kind of variations. For dinner tonight, we are going to have meatloaf cupcakes. My kids love meatloaf this way, and it cooks easier. To it, we're going to add some parsley. We're going to add some dehydrated kale, just a little bit of that. You can see that's from our garden this past summer. We've got some onion powder here. We're also going to add more of this freeze-dried rice. This really helps soak up some of the grease in the hamburger meat as the meatloaf is cooking. And we don't need to rehydrate it all. It will rehydrate through the cooking process. We're also going to add a pint here of our home canned salsa. And then we're going to, of course, add some salt and pepper. So I'm going to get all of this in the bowl, and then we're just going to kind of mix it up together. And then this is part of the reason why you don't need to rehydrate that rice, because the salsa has enough juice in it to help do that for you. And then, as you can see, just kind of mixing this up. And then the benefit of putting these in a cupcake can and making the muffin meatloafs is that the cook time is a lot less. Regular meatloaf takes a really long time to cook because it's so thick and dense. These cook faster than the kids. There's something novel about it. They'll eat it. They're much more likely to eat it when it's in a little cupcake form than when it's in a slice on their plate. So they really enjoy this. And as a side dish, we're going to eat some frozen green beans. I'm going to add a quart of our home canned sweet corn, and we're going to season it with organic seasoned salt. And that's what we'll eat as our veggies with the meatloaf. I also am thawing a gallon of raw apple cider. We put about 15 gallons of apple cider in the freezer in the fall. And if you freeze it, just leave a little space at the top so it doesn't explode in the freezer and overexpand. And then this, you just thaw it, and it's actually wonderful when it's like half thawed because it's kind of like a slush, and the kids like their slushy apple cider. So this is a treat that they're going to have tonight with their dinner. Okay, and here's another benefit to cooking it in the muffin tins. You can see they kind of have the grease in there, but as you pull them out of the muffin tins, all the grease is left behind there, and they can kind of drain. And then we can use this grease as a cooking fat for future meals. So especially in a pantry challenge, but all the time, don't waste your hamburger grease. You can put it in a jar and freeze it, and it's useful as a cooking fat. So here's how the little meatloaf cupcakes turned out. And then we have our side veggies here to serve with it. And then, of course, the apple cider that the kids are going to love. So let's get this plated up. And the children talked me into having some pear sauce with their dinner. So I just opened a jar, and then no need to warm it up. They just eat it straight out of a jar, and they love it. So pear sauce with their meal. All right, and just like with my shredded carrots, I also shred zucchini and freeze it in muffin tins into these little pucks. And each puck holds about a half a cup of shredded zucchini. So whenever I want to make zucchini bread or zucchini muffins through the winter, all I have to do is grab out the appropriate number of pucks. I believe I needed 2 cups for the recipe that I was making, so I pulled out 8 pucks of the shredded zucchini. And here is the recipe. This is the zucchini bread that I'm going to make for tomorrow's breakfast. And I am not doubling this. This makes enough loaves for our family just as is. And so once again, I'm making this the night before to make Tuesday morning that much easier, because Tuesday is back to school. We have full-time school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and those mornings can be a little rough after the days off. So here is my zucchini bread. It made 3 small loaves, which is just enough. We usually have 1 little loaf left over. And that is what we're having for breakfast today. Some of you asked what I eat on days the kids have a bready breakfast, because I can't eat gluten or sugar. So I'm just having leftover taco casserole that I had made a few days ago. And that's usually what I do on days where the kids are having muffins and pancakes and things. I'm kind of the human garbage disposal that just clears the fridge of whatever leftovers need eaten up. I've been known to eat leftovers from dinner. It doesn't have to be a breakfast food specifically. And then I just have that with my warm tea in the morning, and that makes me a happy camper. So I actually prefer a lot more protein than sweets, probably because I haven't had them in so long, because I can't have them. Okay, and now I'm going to make some homemade milk. I'll show you the easy way to do this if you don't have a milk machine. So I just put some cashews. These are cashew pieces I get in bulk from Azure Standard, and I have them in the bottom of my blender here, and I just fill it the rest of the way with water. And I have a Ninja blender, nothing fancy. And then we just blended it up. And then I'm going to run it through this filter here in my jar. And then I filter out the pulp of the cashews. The kids are very excited about this milk. I filter out the cashew pulp and save that to use in future baking items. And there is my cashew milk. It's really that easy. And now we're going to make homemade marshmallow fluff, because we're going to turn this homemade milk into hot cocoa. That's what the kids asked for today. So I have 1 cup of hot water in the bottom of my mixing bowl here, and I am going to add 3 tablespoons of beef gelatin. You can use any kind of gelatin, but I use beef gelatin that I get in bulk from Azure Standard. And I'm going to mix that together, and we're going to sort of let this bloom for a minute. That gelatin will absorb the water and kind of fluff up a little bit, and that's what you want to make your marshmallow fluff. And so using it in the mixing bowl like this is really helpful. Otherwise, you're going to have to whisk it by hand. But once you have it fluffed up, put it in the mixer and go ahead and turn it on. And then you're going to pour in 1 cup of the sweetener of your choice. So you could choose honey, you could use maple syrup, you could use agave sweetener, any kind of corn syrup, whatever you wanted. We are putting in 1 cup of maple syrup. And as this mixes in, it's going to fluff up. That gelatin's going to turn it into that kind of whipped marshmallow fluff texture. And sometimes we do half and half. Sometimes we do half a cup of maple syrup, half a cup of honey. But as you can see, once that's in, I turn it on high and just let it whip. And then we either add peppermint extract or vanilla extract. And you don't need much. Today we're going to do vanilla extract. We're just going to do about a teaspoon or so and add that into the fluff. It's going to continue to fluff up, and then we end up with a lovely little marshmallow fluff that we can put in our hot cocoa here. And I showed you my hot cocoa process in last week's video, so I won't show you that here. But we eat hot cocoa probably 4 times a week throughout the winter. My kids love it, and really it's pretty nutritious, all things considered, when you make it from scratch. The cacao powder is really good for them. The gelatin and the fluff is good for them. It's got the minerals of the maple syrup and the cashew milk. So as far as treats go, it's really not that bad for them. So I don't mind making it for them, and they really, really enjoy that. Oops, someone put a little too much marshmallow fluff in her cup, and it is overflowing. But no problem. I'm sure that she doesn't mind having too much fluff. And this is just a little treat they're having before school, a little hot cocoa to help us concentrate on our school lessons today. It never hurts. Then the baby, because the cocoa's too messy and hot for him, he just likes to eat a little bit of the fluff. And he makes quite a mess, but it's definitely worth it. Now to store this when you're done, it's best to use right away. If you store it in your fridge, it's going to turn into kind of a jello texture. It's definitely going to change. It's not as good as it is fresh, but once it melts into your cocoa, it'll be just fine. So put it in the fridge and then you can use it the next day. All right, Tuesdays around here, it means Taco Tuesday, and today we're going to have nachos instead of tacos. And my stove is a mess. Let's just ignore that. I didn't get a chance to clean it in the morning after breakfast. So I have a pound of our homegrown beef here, and we're just going to cook that up, and then we're going to make a nacho bar. But to our beef, I'm adding a little more of that freeze-dried rice. This just kind of stretches the meat a little bit and also will help soak in some of that grease. I want my kids eating the grease. It's full of vitamin D and it's very good for them. So we're also going to add our homemade taco seasoning. I also talked about this in last week's video. This is what we always add to our taco meat, and that makes a wonderful meat. So there it is, the ground beef and the rice mixture. We have some of the leftover vegan cheese to put on our nachos. We have some salsa. Here's just some leftover canned corn we need to use that the baby is currently trying to eat. Here's some peach hot sauce. We have some pickled peppers, and then this is the last of the corn chips that we have in the house. Once these are gone, we're going to be making our corn chips from scratch. So I thought today, as an easy meal, we would just make some nachos instead of making homemade tortillas or anything like that. And so each kid sort of picks what they want on their nacho plate. This is a lot like our baked potato bar that we had the day before. It's really fun for the kids because they can just kind of pick whatever they want to have on it. So great idea for you busy moms. It's an easy meal. It's always a hit with the kids. You really can't go wrong with something like a nacho bar or a baked potato bar. We're almost out of my peach hot sauce, and I am so sad because this is one of my favorite things I canned last year. We will definitely be canning more of that this coming August. So, all right, everybody's eating. Tonight for dinner, I'm going to make a pie. I'm going to make a butternut squash pie, kind of like a pumpkin pie. We're going to use some more of these water-glassed eggs from last July. I just have 2 of them that I rinsed off. I'm also out of brown sugar, so I'm making my own. I just have this half cup of sugar right here, and I added just a little bit of this molasses to the top, and that is the same as brown sugar. So I can just put that directly into my mixing bowl like that. We're also going to add cinnamon. We're going to add nutmeg, a little bit of ginger, and then we have some of our pink Himalayan salt. And then to that, we're going to add this butternut squash puree. Instead of pumpkin, it works the same in pumpkin pie. So butternut squash it is because that's what we have in the house. And then I have a little bit of our homemade cashew milk that's still left here. We're going to mix all of this together into our bowl to make a pumpkin pie. David made me 2 pie crusts, which is lovely because I'm going to use one of the, here's my pie crust recipe. Just FYI, we doubled this today to make, we're going to make a chicken pot pie for dinner. So I needed 2 crusts, 2 very large crusts for that. And then I just needed 1 bottom crust for the pumpkin pie. So doubling this was more than enough. All right, so I've got my 1 crust all pressed into my pan for my pumpkin pie, and the recipe for this pumpkin pie is going to be in the description below. This is a dairy-free pumpkin pie. Here, let me kind of show you. We're going to bake this for 10 minutes at 450 degrees, and then for the rest of the time at 350. But it's for our chicken pot pie, I have a quart of canned chicken, that leftover canned corn. I'm also going to add the leftover spinach from our baked potato bar that didn't get eaten. That's going to go into our chicken pot pie, and we're just going to mix that up together. And then to this, I'm going to add the leftover chicken and rice soup that we had on Sunday night. This is just perfect. It already has our veggies in it. This will make a great chicken pot pie filling. It's a great way to get this out of the fridge and repurpose it. So we're just going to warm all this up on the stove. And then to that, I'm adding a little bit extra salt and pepper because It needed it with the extra canned chicken. I tend to can my meat without salt so that I can salt my food to taste after it comes out of the jar. So this needed a little extra salt. I'm also going to add more of that arrowroot powder that I mentioned the other day that I use as a thickening agent. So we're just going to pour a bunch of this in, and this is what's going to turn this chicken pot pie, all that broth, into kind of the gravy texture that we want for the pot pie filling. So we'll just mix this all around, and then as this heats up, it will thicken, and this is going to be the filling for our pot pie. And then to this, I decided to also add a little bit of our dehydrated sweet corn. I thought that would help absorb a little bit of the extra moisture and also give it a nice crunch. This dehydrated sweet corn has the best texture once it rehydrates. I really enjoy that. So I will be dehydrating way more corn next year as opposed to canning it, because this is by far my favorite method of preserving corn so far. All right, and so there is our pot pie filling. It will thicken a little more through the baking process in the pie shell, but this is the texture that I want it right now before it goes into the pie crusts. And there we go. I'm using my biggest cast iron pot for my chicken pot pie. I've rolled out my top crust, and we're just going to throw that on top of this. And it's not the prettiest pot pie you ever did see, but it will definitely get the job done. It will fill bellies, give us some nutrition, and that's what really matters. So just cutting some holes in it to help vent it as it's baking, allow some of that moisture to escape. And then we're just going to get this in the oven. We're going to bake it on 350 while the pumpkin pie, the butternut squash pie, is finishing. And then I'm working on canning some black beans while that is baking. I have a policy that whenever 7-quart jars empty, I need to fill them up with something. And so today I am choosing to fill them with some of the dried beans that I have on my shelf. This is a great way to make some convenient meals in the future. These beans will likely be used next or this coming spring as I'm busy in my garden. These will make some quick meals. So these had been soaking for 24 hours. We drained the jars, refilled them with water, and now they're going to go in the pressure canner for 90 minutes. And I am terrible at doing things one-handed, aren't I? There we go. I'm going to get it in the pressure canner and then get that going, and then those will finish, or those will be pressure canning while we're working on dinner. And then with dinner tonight, I'm making some homemade lemonade. This is about 3/4 a quart of lemon juice. I squeeze lemons every January when I get my bulk citrus order, and then I freeze that juice for the rest of the year. And I need to get rid of this before my bulk citrus order comes here in the next couple weeks. And so I've had this thawing, this juice here, and usually for about a half gallon of lemonade, I add about a pint of juice. This is a little more than a pint, but that's fine. It'll just have a little extra vitamin C flavor in it. You can freeze in glass like this. This was frozen in glass. I just use a wide mouth jar, and I make sure I don't overfill, and your glass won't break if you do that. Okay, so to our lemonade, I'm adding here about a cup of sugar, and then I'm going to pour this in. It's still a little too frozen, so I'm going to have to work to kind of break up some of that ice to get it in there. So let me do that really quickly. And then there we go. It's all broken up. We're going to add that in there, and then we're going to fill it the rest of the way with water, and then we'll stir that around, and we've got a nice, healthy, homemade lemonade here. Got my helper, as always, sitting up here wanting to help me. But we try to do lemonade about once a week, and then we switch. We'll do apple cider once a week, and it's just kind of nice. It's a little boost of vitamin C with that fresh squeezed lemon juice. Always a nice treat, especially in the summer. And sometimes, unfortunately, we forget to use up all of that lemon juice in the summer, and it's left over, and now I'm just scrambling to use up all the lemon juice before we preserve more. All right, and here our pot pie and our butternut squash pie are all done. There's our lemonade, and this is what we are having for dinner tonight. And here is what the inside of that pot pie looks like, all those veggies, and it did thicken up nicely. So each child will just have a slice of that, and then if they eat their pot pie, they get a nice little slice of the pumpkin pie. And then, of course, we've got the lemonade to enjoy. I think everybody is happy with this meal. Now I'm prepping for Wednesday's breakfast. I'm going to make chia pudding. I put a little dash of maple syrup in the bottom of my jars, and then I have some chia seeds, and I have some homemade cashew milk. We made another batch of this today. We've been going through quite a bit with all the cocoa we're drinking. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of chia seeds in the bottom of each of these little jars, and I just put it directly on top of the maple syrup here. And then the rest of the jars, I'm going to fill all the way up with my cashew milk, and then I'm just going to stir it around. And then as these sit in the fridge overnight, those chia seeds sort of absorb the moisture of the cashew milk, and they expand into this gelatinous texture that's really delicious. And my kids call it chia pudding, and they love it. As you can see, you can just shake the jars up to thoroughly mix them. And let me show you what that's going to look like here in the morning. But first, time to make another casserole. You know me and egg casseroles. So I'm going to wash off the rest of the water glass jar, or the eggs from that jar. To the bottom of our casserole, we're going to add this one leftover baked potato. We're going to add leftover bacon, and then we're going to pour over the rest of these eggs. Egg casseroles are a great way to use stuff up. Okay, and then to this, I'm also going to add some veggie powder. This is from Shed Farm. I'm going to leave a link in the description, and you can get 10% off your order with Shed Farm using the code 3rivers. So check that out in the description. This powder is wonderful. It has all sorts of veggies in it, and my friends from Shed Farm sent me this to try a little earlier in the year, and I just love it. I kind of sneak it into everything. Breakfast casserole, sometimes I put it in my baked goods, any kind of soup, and it's just a great way to get some concentrated veggies into the kids in the middle of winter. So, all right, all I'm going to do is just sprinkle that powder right on top of my potatoes, and that is going to just add another little layer of vegetables. Once again, Shed Farm, check it out. On top of that, I'm going to put the bacon, and then we're just going to pour then the eggs over the top of that mixture. In the morning, this will bake on 350 for approximately 30 to 40 minutes, just however long. It depends on how deep your dish is, how long it takes the middle to kind of firm up and cook up. But there we go. That's going to go in the fridge overnight. All right, bright and early the next morning, we're going to have the leftover zucchini bread from the one loaf we didn't finish. Here's that wonderful egg casserole that we put together last night. And this is how that chia pudding turned out. So here, like I said, it expands and it's kind of like a gelatinous goo. And that goo that's on the outside coating now of the chia seed is kind of the same thing that's in aloe or on the inside of okra around the seeds. It's really good for your gut health. It's very healing for the gut. Chia seeds are full of calcium and lots of other nutrients, so this is a breakfast that I really like to try to give my kids as often as possible. I keep these in the fridge, and my oldest son especially will just eat these as a snack whenever he wants, but this is what we're having for breakfast today. So there's what the inside of that casserole looked like all cut up. I think the kids are hungry and ready to eat. Okay, and now for today's lunch, I need to make some mayonnaise. So I have 2 fresh egg yolks in my food processor. I separated the eggs from the whites. I added 2 tablespoons of mustard, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and a little bit of salt. And then I'm going to put this in the food processor, and I'm going to slowly pour in olive oil, about a cup to a cup and a half of olive oil, and then that will emulsify, and here we go. We have my homemade mayonnaise. I always make my own mayonnaise because I just feel like the ingredients are better than what I can buy in the store. I can't have soy. I'm soy intolerant, and most of mayonnaises have soy in them. So that's what we use. There's my homemade mayonnaise for lunch. We are going to have tuna and noodles for lunch, and I found these 2 random boxes of different gluten-free pastas in the back of my pantry. I believe these were given to me when we were sick last year. People dropped off groceries very kindly, and these just didn't get used, so I need to use them up. All right, I'm going to mix up. I have 6 cans of tuna here, and then I added a little bit of relish. I'm going to add half of this jar of mayonnaise to it, I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper, and then I'm going to add a little bit of pickled pepper juice. And we're just going to mix that up. There is our tuna mixture. And then I cooked my noodles. We just put the tuna on top, and then this is what we're having for lunch today. Always a hit. You can't go wrong with tuna noodles. Normally I would add a little bit of peas to it, but I just didn't today. So this is what we are having. Wednesday nights, the girls have gymnastics, so right now I'm home with the boys while the girls are gone. We're having some canned corn and freeze-dried peas and green beans. I also roasted some potatoes throughout the day in the crock pot. We always have crock pot meals on Wednesdays. And then here's 2 pork arm roasts in here with some Italian seasoning. That's been in the crock pot all day. And so we're just gonna baby helping again. We're going to put this together, and this is what we are having for dinner tonight. Just me and my boys. And then when the girls get home from gymnastics a little later, I can keep the crock pot on warm, and then they can have their meal later on. But I love my crock pot. I haven't quite converted to an Instant Pot yet, but I still use my crock pot every week. And then, of course, my nightly baking. I'm working on Thursday's breakfast. We're going to have blueberry muffins, and I'm going to double this recipe and make 2 dozen muffins. Here are my ingredients for my blueberry muffins. And then we're going to use my frozen blueberries. I freeze probably about 80 pounds of blueberries every summer to use throughout the year, and I just need 2 cups of blueberries per batch. So we're going to add 4 cups to my 2 dozen muffins. And then in place of the milk, we'll use cashew milk. And in place of, for the oil, we will use regular olive oil. And this is what the batter looks like when it's all mixed together in the mixer. The kids love this because it kind of gives off a little bit of a purpley color, and that's kind of fun and novel in their muffins. All right, and then after they've baked, they smell delicious. We'll just let these sit overnight, and then we have a breakfast all ready for us first thing Thursday morning. And because breakfast is all done, I can just hang out with little Benny here bright and early in the morning after Adam goes to work. And we're just kind of hanging out, drinking our hot tea, and he's eating a muffin while we wait for the other kids to wake up. So great way to start the day. And then right after breakfast, I'm working on these 30-minute rolls. We're going to have these with lunch today. So this is my 30-minute roll recipe. I'm going to cut this in half today because 45 rolls is way more than I need. So everything in this recipe will be cut into half. I'm going to use olive oil for the oil. First thing I'm going to do is get that yeast, water, oil, and honey all activating. I had these leftover egg whites from my mayonnaise yesterday in the fridge. I'm just going to add 1 other fresh egg to that, and that will be the egg that I use in my rolls. And we're just going to get these started here. So a nice, really easy roll recipe. We're going to use these as buns today. So adding my eggs in. Then I'm going to add my salt in. And then we're just going to get this in the mixer. And then add our flour. Get this going. And then the mixer is going to mix and knead my dough for me. Such a blessing. And then once it's done, I'm going to shape them into my rolls. Let me show you how I do that. So basically I just take a little bit of the dough, kind of roll it into a ball, and then put that directly on my cookie sheet. Just a little, kind of like a golf ball sized ball. And then we're going to, once we have them all shaped, we're going to take these out. We're going to stick these right in front of the wood stove and let them rise for just about 5 minutes before we get them in the oven. And our house is very cool, except for in front of the wood stove. So these are just going to sit here for about 5 minutes. We'll keep an eye on them so the little boys don't get into them because they are busy running around and acting crazy right now. All right, and here are our rolls. They're all done. We're just going to put them in a bowl so we can use them later on as buns for lunch. Now we are going to make some sloppy joes. I have a raw onion, and I also chopped up some frozen peppers that we had grown last year. Then I have another one of those cubes of garlic scape that's all pureed. And then to our sloppy joes, along with that, we're going to use a jar here of tomato paste. I also buy my tomato paste in bulk from Azure Standard, and this is the brand that we really like. I'm also going to add, of course, some more of the freeze-dried cooked rice. That helps stretch the sloppy joe meat and absorbs the grease and just adds a little bit of extra bulk and nutrition to the meat, because we are only browning 1 pound of meat today. A little over a pound. I think it's 1.5 pounds. We're going to add some yellow mustard to our sloppy joe mix. We're going to add a little bit of blackstrap molasses, some of our homegrown raw honey, a little bit of pickled pepper juice. That gives it a little bit of a vinegar and peppery taste. So here we go. I've got the ground beef and the peppers and onion and garlic scape all cooked down there. Now we're adding the freeze-dried rice in, and I just kind of have to break it up and kind of let that start absorbing some of the grease from the meat. And then as we add some more of the liquid ingredients in, that rice will continue to absorb and kind of fluff back up, because remember, that is pre-cooked rice that was just put in the freeze dryer. So as soon as it's rehydrated, it is instantly cooked rice. Just adding my can of tomato paste, and we're just going to stir that around in. Also going to add all of this pickled pepper juice. It's my favorite vinegary hot pepper flavor. I love it. I put it in everything. Save that pickled pepper juice. Don't waste it. All right, I am adding my mustard in here too. Just getting this all stirred around. This is at the ugly stage. It will get much tastier here as it all gets mixed together and it cooks up. All right, now we're going to add just a little bit of our molasses. Just enough to give it a little bit of that brown sugar flavor, but we don't have brown sugar in the house, so this is our substitute. We are going to use that molasses and a little bit of raw honey. Also added our salt to it, and just mixing that up. Okay, here we go. I cut our 30-minute rolls in half, and to the inside of it, I added our sloppy joe mix. The kids got a little bit of fruit. These bananas came from my mother. I'll explain where they came from in a minute. But here you go. Here's the meat. That's how that turned out. Some of my kids will eat 2, 3, 4 sandwiches, but this is what they start with on their plate. I can't have the roll, so I just eat the sloppy joe mix in a bowl with a spoon, and that is enough for me. And then here we have our leftover rolls that the kids can have. As I mentioned, those bananas came from my mother. Today, this day, Thursday the 13th, was my birthday, so my mom dropped off food. She knows that food is my love language, and any meal I don't have to cook is a blessing to me. So she made a Mexican beef casserole. This is a gluten-free carrot souffle. She brought a salad full of raw ingredients for the kids, and she brought us a couple of salad dressings so that I didn't have to make any, since I don't generally keep salad dressing in the house. So those were some she brought. She had some avocados and some bananas that were going to go bad, as well as the rest of the green onion from the salad. So she just figured we would eat it, and we surely will. And then she also, my mom always makes me these gluten-free pumpkin muffins, and I will try to get this recipe for you. I'll make it for you sometime. She also, as a treat, gave me some of these little dark chocolate gems that don't have any sugar or soy or anything in them. There's very little chocolate that I can eat on my diet, so that is a blessing. And then on top of her casserole, she included some non-dairy cheese shreds. We tend to not buy these because besides being very expensive, they're also just full of a lot of ingredients if you look on the back of them, and so we just kind of usually do without. But every once in a while, it is nice to enjoy some of these kind of novelty processed foods, and the kids really enjoyed that. So for dinner here, this is what that looked like warmed up. This is that Mexican rice that she made. It was just beef and rice with some salsa, and it had that shredded cheese stuff on top. There's the carrot souffle. And once again, this is something that I was going to make. My sister had made it for us over the holidays in December, and I really enjoyed it and got the recipe from her and didn't have a chance to make it. So I will make this for you next week, and we'll show you the recipe for it. And then here is the salad that my mother brought. And then we are choosing to use this garlic expressions dressing on it. My kids love garlic, so they will enjoy that salad a lot. And then David made me a little gluten-free birthday cake over here. So we are going to have that as dessert with the meal. So that was really nice of David to make me a birthday cake. I don't usually get one. And here we go. Kids are loading up on some raw veggies. I'm pretty sure my mom brought it over because she knew we're doing a pantry challenge and don't have raw veggies in the house. And so she knew that the kids would probably love and appreciate having a salad since it had been a while since we'd had one. All right, and then the last day of meals I'm going to document for this week, we're just having these leftover muffins for breakfast today. We have a very busy day planned. It's going to be all leftovers pretty much. So we had muffins today. For lunch, the kids are getting a choice of leftover casserole, leftover chicken pot pie, and leftover pork roast from the other night. And so everybody sort of picked what they wanted. We warmed it up, and just everybody grab your plate. And then for dinner, David went ahead and made pizza again, and the instructions for our pizza are in last week's video. So very proud of my boys. That was helpful of them for making the pizza. And then finally, I just wanted to show you how those sprouts turned out. In my last video, I showed you my sprouts. This is day 5, how my sprouts looked with the little leaves on them. So I'm going to show you now, if you fill the bowl that your sprouts are in with water, and then you just kind of swirl them around, those seed casings that are on the sprouts will come off, and all of those will kind of float to the surface, you can see, and you can skim them off or kind of pour them off. Now, it doesn't hurt you to eat the seed casing. It's just extra fiber and nutrition and whatever else is in there. But some people prefer not to have those on their sprouts. So by doing this, you can kind of collect all those seed casings and get as many of them out as possible. It's going to be hard to get them all out because they do kind of stick to the sprouts. But anyways, that's what I'm working on right now. And so I drain that out, and what I have left with are my wonderful alfalfa, broccoli, radish, and clover sprouts, I believe. That was what was in my mix. These we will use this week on top of eggs. We'll use them on top of our tacos, even as a pizza topping. We'll throw them cooked in soups, anything like that. They're just a great addition to our diet during a pantry challenge. And I just store them in a little plastic container like this in the fridge.
For this week, we'll see you next week. Bye.